Hey guys, it's been a while since I've uploaded a video. Been actually kind of busy moving into my new home. But for today's video, I wanted to discuss my home networking system that came with the house actually. So wanted to walk you through how it's set up. Also, how I was able to isolate the Internet of Things, like your washer, dryer, thermostats on any smart home products, how I isolated not only the Wi-Fi but the physical ones as well, the physical connections to the router using VLANs. So let's take a look at what we have here. All right, so first things first, we have the cable modem. This is coming in from Spectrum. I do have the 400 service, which actually been getting really good service out of it. I've been getting about 475 lately, so I'm actually quite happy with the service for right now. Anyways, the cable modem is really nothing configured here. It's basically just coming down and it's going into my EdgeRouter 4. And then from the EdgeRouter 4, so we got that connected here, this white cable. From the black cable, we're going into a Ruckus ICX, I want to say 7150 CP12, a 12-port switch. Now this is somewhat of a, I don't want to call it enterprise hardware, but small office hardware. It's not something you typically see in a home use, but thanks to this, I was able to do quite a bit, which is pretty cool because this is a managed switch, and I'll explain that a little bit later. Now also, for you guys that are network guys, I am not. I'm a computer technician by trade, but I am not a network person. I know that this particular EdgeRouter box has an SFP port, so does this switch. I believe I can connect that directly to this as well, and that may save me a port on my switch because I do eventually want to get some power over Ethernet cameras, and this is a power over Ethernet switch, and it does allow all 12 ports to have power over Ethernet. So I think I can either use that port, and if I'm reading it right, I should be able to use maybe a crossover cable or use one of these ports to go into one of the uplink ports as well, but I'm not really sure how that works. This is how they set it up from Amazon when they came out to set it up. So I haven't changed how the router comes into the switch yet, but if you experts out there, let me know if there's a better way to either move this to the uplink or go ahead and buy the SFP modules and get those installed. And I think I was just thinking of using copper because I think this is only licensed for 1 gigabit SSP. Not the 10 gigabit, and I don't think the EdgeRouter uses SSP Plus yet anyway, so yes, let me know. Anyways, so continuing the tour, we have these two cables here, which are my Ruckus R510 access point, wireless access point. They're on port 1 and 2, no, yep, 1 and 2. And then I have my router on port 3. I'm sorry, port 4. Nothing on port 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, yep. Nothing on 5 and 6. And then these two right now are not going anywhere. They're future expansion. They're Ethernet ports throughout the house that I haven't hooked up yet. One eventually will have an Apple TV. And one I may never ever use. It's in the kitchen. It was really meant for telephone. I just changed it over to Ethernet just because we're not going to use regular telephone here in the house. That is what it is. So, and then this white one is going to my office. So this is my office computer. This one is live. And then I have 3 other black cables here, which are for the smart hubs. The house came with some smart home automation stuff like a lock and some other stuff. So we have like, I think Kivo, Samsung Smart Thing, and I forgot what this one is. Yeah, I think this one's for the lights. But yeah, this is the setup. Now what I wanted to do was isolate these Internet of Things that are coming back here to these 3 ports to their own VLAN, so they're not talking on my regular network. You know, I'm not really comfortable with, you know, things possibly being spying on or whatever. Call me paranoid, whatever. But I do want to isolate these things to their own VLAN, as well as I want to isolate the wireless traffic from, you know, for example, if you have a wireless washer, dryer, or thermostats, I want to put that also on the same VLAN. And there's 2 different ways of doing this. Well, 2 different ways you have to do this. For the wireless ports, you have to tag these, including the one going to the router. And when you tag it, I guess it does 802.1q or 802.1q, and that allows basically the VLAN ID to be received through the whole traffic. And I'll show you how I set that up in a little bit when we go to the computer. So that's where we're at. And the reason you kind of want to do this, or another reason you may want to do this, is you may want your kids in a different network than the adults and be able to block certain traffic. That's one of the things I did with the EdgeRouter, is I'm using OpenDNS family, and I have that set up as the DNS that this router only allows to give out. And if somebody tries to switch the DNS server on their device, like on their computer, if they're smart enough to go into, you know, IP settings and change the DNS server, well, the EdgeRouter is blocking that, and we're blocking this through here. Another thing that took me a little bit to get was understanding the flow of traffic when you're creating firewall rules. You know, you're going from your modem, you know, to E0. This is going in, and then it's going out to the switch. And then versus, you know, the other way, if you have traffic coming from your computer, it's going out of the switch in to ETH1. So when you're creating firewall rules, you kind of have to understand what port you're doing the firewall rule on, and if it's going in or out. So for example, for that DNS, to block the DNS, you want to block it coming in. So like the computer requests it coming into this port, so you want the rule to be from ETH1 going in. If you set it to ETH0 coming in, for example, it's coming back from the internet, the computer would have made the request, sent it out to the internet, and then blocked it here, which, you know, creates cycles on the router itself, or it's going to take CPU cycles to do that. Or if you just block it here, blocks, denied, it doesn't go through all that. All right, so let's go to the computer. I'm going to start the recording software over there and show you how I set it up in the EdgeRouter and on the switch and the access points. By the way, this is the R510 access point, wireless access point. All right, we're back here at my computer. I do apologize. My new office is kind of echoey. So there's a lot of echo. I do apologize about that. I'm going to have to do something about that. Maybe get some soundproofing to help with that. But kind of let's get started. So let's review what we saw up there. So we have the internet coming into our EdgeRouter, and that's going into ETH0. And then from ETH1, it is going to our switch on port 3. On port 1 and 2, we have our wireless access points. They are Ruckus R510s. And then my main computer, the one you're actually viewing now, is hooked up to port 11. And then in port 8, 10, and 12, we have the 3 smart hub things. And remember, what we want to do is basically, we want to take the traffic from the access point, or some of the traffic, right, that goes to this physical connection onto this port, and this physical connection into this port, and these 3 physical connections to be in VLAN 2. So I'm going to show you how I configured that. Hopefully I don't miss anything. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the access point, and work my way back. So we're going to go into the access point, then we're going to go into the switch, and then we're going to go into the router to show you how we configured all this. Okay, so first of all, we're at the interface, the unleashed interface for Ruckus. I got to give it to them. These access points are awesome. These are probably the first access points I've ever used that didn't show, or they always have, like anywhere I'm at in the house, I always have high speed. Compared to my wired, I have, like I said, I had 400 megabit service coming from Spectrum, and these wireless access points are able to keep at least 400. So I'm pretty impressed with them. The other thing is I have two of them, and basically one, I'm down here on the access point, one becomes the master and one becomes the slave, which helps with configuration because you only have to configure this in this one box, and then the other box replicates all the settings. And that also includes firmware updates. You only have to do firmware updates on this one interface, and it does it on both boxes, which is really nice. Really good interface. I'm really liking it. I've only had it for a week, but definitely a plus. I'll put the links to them from Amazon, my Amazon affiliate links below for all this equipment. If you want to support the channel and buy it through there, that'll be awesome. Anyways, so I do have two access points. And the first thing, like I said, I wanted to do was create a Wi-Fi network. So I have two networks. And no offense, I'm going to blur out some of the stuff. But I have my main network, which has, all my regular traffic going through it, all the computers and all that good stuff. And then I created another network called Internet of Things, VLAN. And let's go in there to show you how I created it. So basically, if you hit create, it basically brings you to this menu here. And like I said, I just named it Internet of Things. Standard network. If you do guest network, it gets a little complicated with what I wanted to do. It basically, the guest network, how it works on here, it gives a portal, which means you have to log in to this portal through a web page to actually get a username and password. That wasn't working for things like a Ring camera, for example, where it just wants to know what my SSID and password is, right? So I did a standard network. Obviously, I put some security method, WAP2. And then I went to advanced options. And here's where we're going to start changing some things in order to identify what VLAN it's at. So under priority, this access VLAN is the same thing as a VLAN ID. So we're basically going to access VLAN 2. So the default's VLAN 1. That's your main LAN. But what we want is anything that hooks up onto this network, it gets a VLAN tag as 2. So you're going to hear that term, tag and untagged, quite a bit. So what tag means is just that it allows for 1.q, which basically puts 4 bytes in the header to identify what VLAN it's on. The other thing I did for this network is under access control. Nope, not access control, maybe other. Yeah, it was under other. Isolated the wireless traffic from the clients on the same AP. So I don't want anything accessing the same AP to see each other. Now I could also isolate client traffic from all hosts on the same VLAN subnet. So basically they couldn't see each other, but I didn't see the need for that. So I just kept it with this. That's it. So at this point, we created a network and it's pointing to VLAN 2 and it's isolated to this network. So I can't see anything on this IP. And that's really it for the Ruckus interface for the wireless. So let's go to the Ruckus Switch. Now, the way I did it first, or the way I was trying it first, and this, like I said, I'm not a network guy, so this took me a couple of days to figure out. I started here on the wireless APs, then I went to the the Edge router to try to configure it, thinking that the switch was kind of going to work like a dumb switch. It did not. So I wasn't able to get it to work. So That's why we do have to configure some stuff on the switch. And what we have to configure is for ports 1, 2, and 3, we have to tag them. And when you tag them, that allows the switch, those extra little 4 bytes to identify what VLAN they're on. It allows that information to flow through. If you don't have that on, then it basically gets killed at the switch. Now, for the 3 smart hubs, since they're physically connected, we're going to keep those untagged, but we're going to untag them to VLAN 2 in a little bit. And of course, my computer, we're not going to do anything with that. We're just going to keep it as it is. All right, so let's go back to the switch. Another quick note for the switch, if you got a Lennar home, this is what it comes with the Lennar homes. You do have to configure the switch in order to get to the web GUI. I did some things through the command line interface, but I found out you can't do pretty much everything, I believe, through the GUI. So I'm going to show you through that. The other thing is you may want to read up because you do have to set up a username and password. It doesn't come pre-configured, and they don't do it with the Amazon setup. They don't configure a username and password with these switches. If you don't, you can't get into the GUI at all. So this is under the Ruckus ICX Switch Quick Start Guide, security in your web serial internal interfaces. I basically ran this script on the device. And basically what this is doing is, you're creating a username and password and locking down your switch, essentially. So that's what this is doing. Really suggest, and obviously do not keep it username or password. Actually put a username in there and a password. So that would be, and it gives you an example here of a username and password Brocad. So I believe that was the company's previous name. So yeah, just make sure you might have to do this. You'll also have to telnet into the box for the first time to do this as well. So you do have to telnet into the switch. So you have to find out what the switch IP address is. And you can do that through whatever router you have. It should tell you what IP address it is. So once you do this, you're allowed to get back into the interface. So on the interface, the things we had to change is, first of all, in general system settings. So basically inside the general, first thing we're going to need is policy based on VLANs. This is just basically turning on VLANs. I wish they'd just say VLAN enabled, but this is what enables VLAN. One of the things I kept going down to VLAN down here, kept going down to VLAN and ports, and it would just tell me you have to enable VLANs in the system settings. Go to systems setting, and it would take me back to, like I said, that general setting there. And there wasn't anything that says enable VLAN except this ACL port VLAN. That wasn't the same. So I did end up reading some documentation, and I did go through the through the command line interface, telnet it in, and ran some commands to enable the VLAN, which is basically just typing it, going to enable config T, and then typing in VLAN space 2, which creates a VLAN, and also at that point it enables VLAN. I went back into the GUI and noticed that this was checked off. So that must be what enable VLAN is. And Ruckus, if you're watching this, let me know if that's my understanding, if I'm correct. And by the way, anybody in the comments, if I have done something wrong or if there's a better way of doing it, please let me know. I am learning this. This is just, like I said, I haven't seen a video on somebody actually isolating Internet of Things. It's kind of what I wanted to do here. So if there's a better way of doing it, please let me know. So anyways, so we enable our VLAN save, and then we go to VLANs. And actually before that, if we go to ports under Ethernet, this shows you all your ports and what's on and what's off, right? So this is also where you modify your inline power for your ports and all that good stuff. You can modify any of the ports through this interface, through these. But once again, you see this tag, and you'll see that I have the first 3 tagged. Once again, this is my access point, and my router. So we have those 3 tags, but you notice nothing else is tagged, including the three smart hubs, which are the ones that are full 100s. And we'll get to that in a second and why. From what I am assuming, and mind you, this is just an assumption, if we go back to VLANs, the default VLAN is 1, right? So every traffic that this gets is going to go through 1. And it is untagged for 1, 2, and 3. But I also have tagged 1, 2, and 3. And this basically is allowing, if it's not tagged, if the what's coming into the switch is not tagged, it's just going to go default to VLAN 1. If it does have a tag, it's going to say, oh, I'm going to keep this tag on those headers to go through, VLAN 2, and that's only on 1, 2, and 3. Now you'll notice here, my default VLAN does not have VLAN 8, 10, and 12 on 1, 1. 1, 2, and 1, 3 are, I believe, the uplinks, SPF, and the other RJ45 uplinks. I still have mind you, they're disconnected at this time, so we're not doing anything. But that's why that's 1, 2 is the second device on that switch, and 1, 3 is the third device on that switch, and 1, 1 is the main one. So anyways, so you notice that I have those ports down here on VLAN 2 as untagged, and what that's doing is anything that's going into those ports, because they don't have the ability to tag itself, right? You don't have a wireless LAN saying tag it this. We have it untagged so they can get an IP address from VLAN 2. Also very important is with those smart hubs, you do have to reboot them. You have to go up there and disconnect and reconnect them real quick in order for the DHCP services or server to recognize them. I did notice that on 2 of them, they weren't getting IPs until I physically rebooted them. All right, so how do we tag these? So the easiest thing is once you, first of all, let's go to VLANs. And you're gonna add, you can click on add port, and you can create a VLAN just by, saying VLAN 3, name, let's call it kids. And add. And at this point, let's add let's just add a port to it, which is 1.1 tagged. So we want 1.1.1 as tagged and add it. So, and then finish. So you see we have 3, and I should really name my VLAN to IoT, but so now if I created another another wireless network and said VLAN 3, and it goes through that first AP, it would try to route it through this one, through this VLAN. So since I'm not going to do this, I'm going to go ahead and delete this VLAN, but that's how you would create a VLAN. So once you have one there, you can, like I said, well, let's keep going. So modify this view. Modify VLAN, I mean. So let's click on that one. And let's modify ports on it. So we're going to click on modify ports. And this is where we can start adding things, another port. So like if we wanted the second VLAN, right? Tagged, add. But oops, you have to do the little checkbox, I believe. Yeah, checkbox and add. Okay, is it doing anything? Oops, sorry. We wanted to add 2, I'm sorry. Add, so it added 2. Let's say one of my kids had, I believe 6 is unused. I had Ethernet on 6 going, one of my kids had a computer that was connected directly to the switch. What you want to do is untag that, because there you don't have a mechanism, right? The access points, the wireless access points are automatically tagging anything that goes into that wireless. But the main computer does not have that mechanism, so you want it to set 1.1.6 as untagged. So if we add that, and then let's finish, and then here on 3 we'll have 1.1.1.2 as tagged and 1.6 as untagged. So if we looked at my second VLAN, I have 8, 10, and 12. Those are my smart devices or home automation devices. are on there, and they're basically going to go through VLAN 2 because they're untagged here and not up here. And as you notice, once we clicked on 1.1.6, or I'm sorry, port 116 untagged, it also removed it from the default VLAN. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this VLAN, and then 1.1.6 is up here. So really, that is it from the port configuration. I hope I explained that. It took me a while to find this. If you don't do this, like I said, if you don't tag those ports for the wireless APs and leave these untagged, it just won't route traffic to VLAN 2 and to the router. All right, so next step is once you save this, of course, you save it, you should be good to go. All right, on the edge router. So this gets a little complicated. So what I had to do is, because if we go back to our drawing, everything, so all the VLAN information is going through one physical wire. So just, both VLAN 1 and VLAN 2, or I should say network 1 and VLAN 2 are going through the same physical wire. So what we want to do is, what I did was I created a VLAN for the Internet of Things. So I added a VLAN, so add VLAN. And then you select what interface that VLAN is going to be on. You name it. And so the VLAN ID, this is very important. So you have to match the VLAN IDs you've been using for both the switch and the APs, right? So for example, for the Internet of Things, it would be 2. And if I was continuing with the kids VLAN, it would be VLAN 3. So you would put 2 there. You put the description of what it is so you know what it is. And then you're going to add a manual address. And you want to keep it, whatever subnet you really want. Doesn't really matter. I mean, if you're watching this video, I'm sure you know about subnets and how to configure a router. So like 192.168.1.3, for example, or I'm sorry, .3.1, for example, will give me a different subnet, and then /24. And it's safe. So that's exactly what this is here for this VLAN. So what you'll see is the interface is 1.2. And it's a VLAN. It has the IP address, and let's go to config. So you can see it's just very basic. So, bam, you added your VLAN. What's next? Well, you need DHCP for that VLAN. So one of the things we have to go into is we can just click either on the DHCP server, or we can go to services, and it takes you to the DHCP already. And then we're going to add a DHCP server. And let's go to this configuration, view details. So basically, you name it, whatever it's going to be, that subnet that it's going to be in. So for example, if we wanted .3, we would put the subnet .3.0/24. And then you will your starting range and your stop range of your IPs and the router IP as well. So 192.168.3.1, for example, we're continuing with the .3. It's network if we wanted to. And then the DNS as well. It's just basically I have it set up the same as the router because I have DNS forwarding. All right. So we save that, right? You add that. Good. Next thing we need to do is go to DNS. And then if you're using DNS forwarding, like I'm using, you'll want to add that to the listen onto that interface as well. All right, what else? Really after that, you should start getting traffic through that. One thing I did have to do, and I'm not sure if I had to do this because I was doing a lot of troubleshooting. I noticed that on my Internet of Things network, okay, we're there. You click on that down arrow should take you here. This setting was set to disable, where on my other DHCP services, it was set to enable. So I enabled it. I don't know if that did anything, but I did that when I was trying to troubleshoot why I wasn't getting DHCP services to the device connected to that access point. All right, so once we've done all that, that's really it. You should start seeing on your DHCP services, you should start seeing leases come up for all the devices that you've set up to go through VLAN 2. And that's how I was able to isolate all the traffic. Oh, one thing real quick on the firewalls, if you have any firewall rules, firewall policies, and here's the DNS firewall rule that I have for the kids. Let me go to edit rule set. So basically, I have an exception for the doorbell ring. The Ring doorbell. Believe it or not, they use port 53. Geez, who knows why? So basically, I have one for the door, an exception that basically says that if it's coming from the doorbell, that it's allowed to use port 53 for whatever it wants. Okay, so it's just a very basic rule. So if you go to basic, accept both TCP and UDP. The source is the MAC address of that particular device. Destination is 53. So it's just accepting that doorbell. I did the same thing for my PC just because I don't want to be blocked from certain things. And then, like example, if you want your wife's PC or your wife's iPhone as well as exceptions, you can do that as well. And then I basically tell it to allow the DNSs from, and mind you, all the actions so far are accept from the OpenDNS. Just go to basic here, accept, OpenUDP. I named it, and then the source, the destination is going to be the IP address of the OpenDNS and 53. And I did that again for the second server. And then we're going to drop, this last rule basically drops anything else. So if I go to basic, I'm going to drop both TCP and UDP, and basically anything that's destination 53. So it goes to rule 1. Are you good? Yes. You good? Yes. 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 Block. On the interfaces, you add which interfaces you want it to work on. So for example, on that second VLAN, I actually had to come in here and add that to that interface as well. So, yep. So I do have that in there. So if you do this, you'll have to, and you want those firewall rules to be part of that. If you have firewalls for, ETH1, and you want it to be part of ETH1.2, you have to come in here. And I do have this, like I said, this is coming in. So the DNS rule is being blocked at Ethernet 1. So if we go back to our drawing, once again, going in, right, into ETH1, that's where we want to stop the traffic. Really, that is it. Like I said, at this point, you should have a functioning VLAN. If you like the video, please let me know. If you want to see things more like this, let me know as well. Once again, I kind of did this video because there wasn't a full tutorial on how to get both the wireless Internet of Things isolated and your wired Internet of Things isolated as well. And you can use this as well to create a VLAN for your kids to protect them from, if you don't want them to go to certain sites, for example, use that DNS just on that VLAN for the kids as well. So, or if you're in a small office environment, maybe you want, accounting in one wireless and, sales on another. This should also apply to that. Well, thank you for watching. Talk to you later.